Samantha, 27. I paid for a birthday dinner that was never meant to be mine, and that was the night I learned exactly how expensive betrayal can be. I have always believed that family disagreements stay within the family. That belief cracked the night my aunt turned a celebration into a calculated trap and left me sitting alone in a nearly empty restaurant in downtown Chicago, staring at a bill that cost more than my monthly rent. It was my Aunt Patricia's 50th birthday, and she insisted on celebrating at a trendy rooftop restaurant overlooking the Chicago River, not far from Millennium Park. She had spent weeks talking about how this birthday was symbolic, how she had given so much to the family, and finally wanted something special for herself. Everyone agreed. My cousins flew in from Denver and Phoenix. My uncle drove in from Indianapolis. Even relatives I had not seen since the 4th of July barbecue in Navy Pier showed up dressed in their best. I showed up early because I have always been the dependable one. Patricia had asked me a few days before if I could help coordinate the cake delivery and make sure the decorations were set up correctly. She called me responsible and mature, which should have been my first warning sign. I arrived at the restaurant around 5 in the evening, helped the hostess arrange the custom gold balloons, and made sure the cake with her name written in elaborate icing was stored safely in the back. The dinner started beautifully. The skyline shimmered outside the glass walls, the lights of the city reflecting off the river. Everyone was laughing, taking photos, raising glasses of wine. Patricia wore a shimmering emerald dress and kept saying how grateful she was for all of us. She hugged me twice in front of everyone and told them I had been such a huge help. I felt appreciated. I felt included. The food was expensive. I knew that from the menu alone. Steaks, seafood towers, specialty cocktails. Patricia kept encouraging people to order whatever they wanted. She insisted that this was a once-in-a-lifetime celebration and that we should not worry about anything. I did not think much of it because she had a good job in real estate in Chicago and often talked about her investments and bonuses. I assumed she had budgeted for this. As the evening went on, relatives slowly began leaving. Some had early flights. Some claimed babysitters needed to get home. It was all gradual and subtle. I was still there because I had helped organize everything and because I genuinely wanted to spend time with Patricia. By the time the cake was cut and the staff started clearing plates, the table had shrunk from 15 people to maybe 5 of us. Patricia, 2 of my cousins, 1 uncle, and me. I remember feeling content. Tired, but content. The city lights were brighter now, and the restaurant had that end-of-night calm where the music softens and staff begin stacking chairs in empty corners. I stood up and helped gather gift bags and leftover decorations. Patricia thanked me again and said she just needed to step away to the restroom with my cousins to freshen up before heading out. I nodded and kept organizing the remaining items. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. I assumed there was a line at the restroom. I checked my phone. No messages. I looked toward the hallway where the restrooms were located and saw nothing but a waiter walking by with a tray. The restaurant was clearly closing soon. The music had stopped completely. Staff were wiping down nearby tables. That was when I felt the first flicker of unease. I walked toward the restroom corridor and did not see anyone I recognized. I returned to the table and called Patricia. It went straight to voicemail. I texted 1 cousin. No response. I called again. Nothing. The restaurant manager approached with a polite but firm expression. He asked if we were ready for the check. I told him we were still waiting for a few people. He glanced at the now empty entrance and said the rest of our party had already left about 10 minutes earlier. I felt my stomach drop. He returned moments later with a black leather folder and placed it gently on the table. I opened it and saw a total that made my hands start shaking. It was nearly $4,000. The entire dinner, the drinks, the desserts, everything. I explained that I was not the host and that my aunt had organized the event. The manager listened but calmly said that no one had left a card on file and that since I was the only guest remaining at the table, the responsibility defaulted to me. He added that if payment was not processed, they would need to involve law enforcement because it would be considered a dine and dash situation. I could feel heat rising in my face. I tried calling Patricia again, straight to voicemail. I sent messages asking where she was. No response. I checked social media in desperation and saw a photo my cousin had posted from outside the restaurant 15 minutes earlier with the caption about the best birthday ever. They had left. Intentionally. In that moment, I understood everything. The gradual exits, the bathroom excuse, the way Patricia kept encouraging everyone to order freely. I was the dependable one, the one with a stable job as a financial analyst, the one who would not cause a scene, the one who would not risk police involvement over public embarrassment. My pride would cost me thousands. The manager returned, and I realized I had 2 choices. Argue until police arrived and risk humiliation, or pay and deal with it later. I could already imagine being questioned, the whispers from staff, possibly even being escorted out. I felt trapped. So I paid. I handed over my card with shaking fingers and watched as they processed the charge. I forced a tight smile and even tipped because I knew the waitstaff were not responsible for my aunt's scheme. When I finally walked out into the cool Chicago night air, the city felt colder than it had hours earlier. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt something sharper than sadness. It was betrayal mixed with humiliation and a deep understanding that this had been planned. Patricia had chosen me as the scapegoat because she assumed I would absorb the damage quietly. On the train ride back to my apartment near Lincoln Park, I replayed every detail. Her compliments, her insistence on luxury, the timing of the bathroom trip. It was too precise to be accidental. She knew exactly what she was doing. When I got home, I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and stared at the charge notification. $4,000 for a lesson in family loyalty. I did not call her. I did not send angry messages. I did not post anything online. I went to bed with a calmness that surprised even me, but underneath it was a steady burn of anger that would not fade. Patricia thought she had won that night. She thought I would swallow the cost and move on. She underestimated how well I remember numbers, how carefully I observe patterns, and how patient I can be when someone crosses a line. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the city outside my window, and I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not confront her in anger. I would not demand reimbursement. I would wait, and when the time was right, I would make sure that what she lost would be far greater than a single dinner bill. Update 1. Samantha, 27. A month after I paid $4,000 for a birthday dinner that was never meant to be mine, I still felt the weight of that charge every time I opened my banking app. Time did not soften it. If anything, it sharpened it. For weeks after Patricia abandoned me in that Chicago rooftop restaurant, she acted as if nothing had happened. She posted photos from the party, tagged everyone, thanked them publicly for making her milestone birthday unforgettable. She never thanked me for covering the bill. She never transferred money. She never even acknowledged that I had been the one left behind. When we saw each other at a Sunday family brunch in Oak Park, she hugged me tightly and smiled as if we shared a harmless secret. I smiled back. Inside, I was cataloging everything. I am a financial analyst. Numbers are my language. I do not forget them. I remember exact totals, timestamps, details. I remembered the moment she left, the exact number on the receipt, the look on the manager's face. I remembered the social media post that confirmed she had walked out intentionally. So when my mother's birthday approached a month later, I saw an opportunity disguised as a gift. My mother, Linda, had always been softer than her sister. She loved family gatherings, sentimental speeches, photos framed on every wall of her house in Evanston. She had no idea what Patricia had done. I had not told her. I wanted this to unfold naturally. One Sunday afternoon, while we were walking along the lakefront near Navy Pier, I told her I wanted to organize something special for her birthday. I said I would handle everything, the restaurant, the guest list, the arrangements. I watched her face light up in that gentle, grateful way only my mother could manage. She hugged me and said she felt lucky to have such a thoughtful daughter. That part was genuine. I did want her to have a beautiful evening, but I also wanted something else. I suggested a high-end steakhouse in downtown Chicago, one even more expensive than the rooftop place Patricia had chosen. It was known for its marble floors, dim lighting, private rooms, and a wine list that read like a luxury catalog. My mother hesitated at first, saying it might be too extravagant. I reassured her that I had everything under control. She happily invited everyone: cousins, uncles, distant relatives from Milwaukee, and of course Patricia. When my aunt received the invitation, she reacted exactly as I expected. She praised my initiative publicly in the family group chat, saying how wonderful it was that I was honoring my mother properly. She added a comment about how much she loved when the younger generation stepped up to take responsibility. I read that message twice and felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. I made sure the reservation was under my mother's name. That detail mattered. The night of the dinner arrived, and I dressed carefully. Not flashy, but polished. I arrived early again, just like before. I coordinated with the restaurant manager in advance, explaining that we would be a large party and that I wanted the evening to feel seamless. I did not mention payment arrangements. I simply confirmed that the check would be presented at the end of the night to the table host. The manager nodded and made a note. When the family began to arrive, the energy was warm and celebratory. My mother looked radiant in a deep blue dress, smiling at everyone who walked through the door. Patricia arrived fashionably late, wearing another dramatic outfit and bringing an oversized gift bag. She hugged my mother and complimented the venue loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. I watched her carefully. The menu was even more extravagant than the last place. Dry-aged steaks, imported seafood, rare wines. I encouraged everyone to order whatever they wanted. I insisted that this was my mother's special night and that no one should hold back. I saw Patricia's eyes light up at that phrase. She remembered saying something similar at her own party. My uncle ordered the most expensive bottle of red wine. My cousins ordered seafood towers, stacked with lobster and crab. Patricia ordered a specialty cocktail and then another, and then chose the highest priced steak on the menu without hesitation. I followed her lead. I ordered the chef's tasting appetizer platter, which included items flown in from the West Coast that morning. I added a premium wine pairing. I suggested sides for the table, truffle mashed potatoes, imported asparagus, rare mushrooms. I asked about the dessert menu early, making sure we would try multiple options. Throughout the night, I played my role perfectly. I laughed at jokes, toasted my mother, helped pass plates. I made sure Patricia saw how effortlessly I moved through the evening. I wanted her comfortable. I wanted her relaxed. As the night progressed, the bill climbed invisibly. I kept a mental tally. $4,000 had been my cost. Tonight we were heading far beyond that. I noticed the same pattern beginning to form as before. One cousin mentioned leaving early because of work the next day. An uncle said he had a long drive ahead. Gradually, chairs emptied. I made no attempt to stop anyone. I simply hugged them goodbye and thanked them for coming. Eventually, we were down to a smaller group. My mother, Patricia, 2 cousins, and me. It was almost a mirror of that rooftop night, except this time I was in control. Desserts were brought out in dramatic fashion. A custom cake with my mother's name written in gold icing, multiple plated sweets arranged around it. I encouraged Patricia to try everything. She did not hesitate. When the staff began clearing the table and stacking chairs in distant corners, I felt that familiar late-night shift in atmosphere. The restaurant was closing soon. The lights dimmed slightly. The music softened. I stood up and helped gather gift bags, just as I had before. My mother looked happy and slightly overwhelmed in the best way. Patricia leaned back in her chair, satisfied, completely unaware. I could almost feel the symmetry of it. At one point, Patricia suggested she needed to step away briefly, mentioning the restroom. I nodded casually, heart steady, mind clear. She rose from her chair, along with one of my cousins, and disappeared down the hallway. I did not follow. Instead, I signaled to the waiter and asked for one more round of the most expensive after-dinner drinks available. I added a rare dessert wine recommended by the sommelier. I requested additional specialty coffees for the table. I told the waiter to bring the most premium options they had. The total was climbing fast now. I glanced at my mother, who was glowing with happiness, completely unaware of the storm forming beneath the surface of this beautiful night. I squeezed her hand and told her she deserved every second of this celebration. Then I turned back to the waiter, looked him straight in the eye, and calmly ordered the most expensive items remaining on the menu, making sure nothing was left untested. Update 2. Samantha, 27. I learned that revenge does not have to be loud to be devastating. Sometimes it only requires timing. The night of my mother's birthday dinner unfolded exactly as I had planned, every detail aligning with a precision that would have made my profession proud. The table was a battlefield disguised as celebration, and I was the only one who understood that. After ordering the final round of the most expensive after-dinner drinks, I watched as the waiter disappeared toward the bar. The glasses arrived glistening under the dim restaurant lights, each one costing more than a typical grocery run. Patricia returned from the restroom just as the drinks were set down. She looked refreshed, satisfied, unaware that the trap was already closing around her. The restaurant was nearly empty now. Chairs were stacked against the walls. Staff moved with that subtle urgency that signals closing time. My mother leaned back in her chair, smiling softly, overwhelmed by what she called the best birthday she had ever had. Seeing her happy almost made me question what I was about to do, but then I remembered standing alone a month earlier with a $4,000 bill in my shaking hands while Patricia's phone went straight to voicemail. I stood up and gently squeezed my mother's shoulder. I told her it was getting late and that I would walk her outside to get a taxi. She gathered her purse and coat, still thanking everyone for coming. Patricia was adjusting her earrings in the reflection of a window, distracted, assuming the night was wrapping up normally. We walked toward the entrance together. The cool Chicago air hit us as the doors opened, and I flagged down a taxi waiting near the curb. I hugged my mother tightly and told her I would settle the final details inside and follow shortly. She kissed my cheek, completely trusting, and stepped into the car. I watched the taxi pull away down the street toward Evanston, the taillights fading into the dark. Then I turned and walked back inside. Patricia was standing near the table, slipping her coat on. The last of the relatives had quietly disappeared while she was in the restroom. That part had been easy. People always leave quickly once the mood shifts to closing time. She did not notice the gradual exodus because she assumed someone else was handling the details. I paused near the entrance, out of her direct line of sight. A waiter approached her with the black leather folder in hand. I saw the moment her posture changed. She took the folder with casual confidence at first, likely expecting a small remaining balance or assuming I had already handled it. She opened it. Even from a distance, I could see her shoulders stiffen. Her head snapped up instinctively, scanning the room. She turned around. The table was empty. No cousins, no uncles, no sister, no niece, just her. I watched her spin slowly in place, confusion turning into alarm. She searched for me with her eyes, but I had stepped just outside the main dining area, blending into the shadows near the entry corridor. The waiter remained calm, professional. I could not hear the exact words, but I saw him gesture politely toward the bill. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. She looked back down at the total. It was significantly higher than the amount she had left me with weeks earlier. Between the premium steaks, the seafood towers, the rare wines, the tasting platters, the dessert wines, and the final round of top-shelf drinks, the total had climbed past $6,000. Her lips moved rapidly. She shook her head. She gestured toward the empty chairs. The waiter maintained his composure, explaining what I already knew he would explain, that she was the remaining guest at the table and that the reservation was under my mother's name. There was no card on file. Patricia pulled out her phone. I saw her tapping frantically, calling someone, probably my mother first, then me. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I did not answer. The manager approached this time, the same composed demeanor I remembered from my own night. Patricia's body language became sharper, more agitated. She gestured toward the door, toward the hallway, as if the missing guests might reappear if she pointed hard enough. The manager remained unmoved. I recognized every stage of what she was feeling: shock, denial, realization. She opened her wallet. I saw her remove a credit card and hand it over. Minutes later, the waiter returned. Something was wrong. Patricia's face drained of color. She tried another card, declined. She began typing on her phone again, perhaps attempting a transfer, perhaps checking balances. The manager stood patiently but firmly. Time was running out. The restaurant staff were clearly ready to close. I stepped farther back into the corridor as the tension escalated. I watched her posture collapse slightly when the final attempt failed. Her shoulders hunched. She looked smaller somehow. The manager's expression shifted subtly, and I knew what was coming next because I had lived that exact moment in fear. Within minutes, 2 uniformed officers entered through the front doors. The sight of them sent a visible jolt through her body. She began explaining, gesturing animatedly, pointing at the empty table, probably insisting that she was not responsible. The officers listened, then turned to the manager for clarification. I remained out of view, heart steady, observing the symmetry of it all. The manager likely explained that payment had not been secured, and that as the last remaining guest associated with the reservation, she was accountable. I saw one officer glance at the bill, his eyebrows rising slightly at the total. Patricia's movements became frantic now. She scrolled through her phone, likely searching for someone to call who would actually answer. No one did. Eventually, one officer gently but firmly took her arm, not aggressively but decisively. The second officer retrieved her purse from the table. She looked around again, eyes scanning desperately for a familiar face. She did not see me. I stayed hidden long enough to watch them guide her toward the exit. Her heels clicked unevenly against the marble floor as she walked between them. The same doors that had opened to laughter and celebration hours earlier now opened to flashing red and blue lights reflecting off polished glass. As they stepped outside, I slipped through a side hallway and exited through a different door. The cold air hit my face again, but this time it felt lighter. From across the street, partially shielded by a parked car, I saw Patricia standing beside the police vehicle, her expression twisted in disbelief as the officer spoke with her. She was not physically restrained, but she was clearly being detained until the situation was resolved. The bill was too large for her to cover on the spot. Without immediate payment, the process had begun. I did not approach. I did not intervene. I did not make eye contact. Instead, I turned and walked calmly down the sidewalk. My heels steady against the pavement, the city skyline stretching above me. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my purse, her name flashing across the screen over and over again. I let it ring. A month earlier, I had stood alone, abandoned, forced to choose between humiliation and compliance. Tonight, the roles had reversed with precise balance. By the time I reached the corner and hailed my own taxi, the police lights were still flashing in the distance. I slid into the back seat, gave the driver my address near Lincoln Park, and allowed myself a slow, controlled exhale. I had not shouted. I had not demanded repayment. I had not publicly accused her. I had simply arranged the same scenario she created for me, and I had stepped away at the exact right moment. As the taxi pulled into traffic and the restaurant faded behind me, I finally silenced my buzzing phone and stared out at the Chicago skyline. I had set her up in the exact same way she had set me up, only this time the cost was far greater. Update 3. Samantha, 27. Revenge is not always a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it is quiet, calculated, and final. The fallout came quickly after that night. Patricia spent hours at the restaurant trying to resolve the situation, but the total was too high and her available credit too low. She eventually managed to avoid formal charges by arranging emergency financing through one of those high-interest, short-term lenders that operate downtown near the financial district. The kind that approve quickly and punish slowly. She had no other option. The restaurant wanted full payment. The police made it clear that this was not going away without a transaction. By the time she secured the loan, the interest terms were brutal. She ended up paying nearly double the original amount over the following months. $6,000 turned into almost $12,000. The irony was not lost on me. But the part that sealed everything was what happened the next morning. Patricia tried to reach my mother repeatedly. I knew she would. My mother, kind and empathetic, would have been her first attempt at rescue. She would have framed the situation as a misunderstanding, a mix-up, some terrible coincidence. Before going to bed that night, I had quietly taken my mother's phone while she was brushing her teeth and blocked Patricia's number. I also muted her on social media and archived their shared chat thread. My mother never noticed. She rarely checks technical details. For 2 days, Patricia tried calling. Texts never delivered. Calls went straight to silence. She must have felt the same frustration I felt that night when her phone ignored me. Eventually, she showed up in person at our house in Evanston. I happened to be there that afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing reports on my laptop. I saw her car pull into the driveway through the window. She walked up quickly, her posture tense, her movements sharp. My mother opened the door, surprised but not alarmed. I stayed seated, listening. Patricia launched into an emotional explanation about being abandoned at the restaurant, about being forced to pay an outrageous bill, about humiliation and police involvement. Her version framed herself as the victim of a cruel setup. She expected sympathy. Instead, my mother looked confused. My mother had left that dinner, early in a taxi, believing everything had been settled. From her perspective, the evening ended beautifully. She had no idea a bill had even been presented after she left. She listened to Patricia's frantic account and tried to piece it together, but without access to the missed calls and blocked messages, it sounded incoherent. Patricia's story made little sense to her. She insisted she had tried to call. My mother calmly stated that no calls had come through. Patricia's agitation escalated. She accused, she gestured, she demanded understanding. The more she spoke, the more unstable she appeared. At one point, my mother glanced toward me, silently asking if I understood any of this. I simply shook my head slightly and kept my expression neutral. From my mother's perspective, Patricia had enjoyed a lavish birthday dinner, left happily, and then weeks later claimed she had been trapped and extorted over a bill at another event. The timeline felt distorted to her. The emotion felt exaggerated. Eventually, my mother's patience thinned. She told Patricia to calm down and suggested that if she had financial issues, she should handle them privately instead of arriving in a panic. Patricia's face shifted from anger to disbelief. She had expected support. Instead, she received doubt. When my mother finally told her to leave and stop creating drama over something that clearly did not add up, Patricia stood frozen for a moment, as if the ground had shifted beneath her. Then she left. She did not come back. In the following weeks, I heard through extended relatives that she was struggling under the weight of that loan. The interest payments were relentless. She had to cut back on expenses, cancel trips, even sell some jewelry she once bragged about. She never mentioned my name publicly. She could not. To explain what truly happened would have required admitting what she had done to me first. Family gatherings continued without her. Invitations stopped being extended. Some relatives believed she was overreacting to stress. Others thought she had financial problems she was hiding. No one connected the dots fully, and I never told them. One evening, months later, my mother casually mentioned that she had not heard from Patricia in a long time. She wondered if they had grown apart. I simply said that sometimes people distance themselves when they are embarrassed. That was the truth. We never saw Patricia again. No more holiday dinners, no more loud entrances, no more dramatic speeches about family loyalty. The silence was permanent. When I look back at that first night in the rooftop restaurant, at the moment I handed over my card to avoid humiliation, I remember how powerless I felt. I remember the weight of betrayal. Now, when I think of the flashing police lights reflecting off the steakhouse windows and the expression on Patricia's face as she realized she was alone, I feel something different. Balance. I did not scream. I did not threaten. I did not expose her publicly. I simply gave her the exact same experience she gave me, only at a higher cost. And that was enough. I took revenge.